too much glare over here with all the way open. That's it, they're just playing. Yeah. Yeah, they change.
You're kind of distracting.
That's what I love.
We need to deal with that. I hit record on it. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We have mics, but I don't know how they work. Kirsty, any? Oh, there we go. They just work.
What button do you just? Oh, there you go.
I did push that one, thank you.
Now they're
Front row, Reggie.
All right, good morning, everyone. I think we only have the 2 mics, so we'll have to pass them. They charge over below the clock, so let's just remember to plug them in afterwards. Welcome back. Happy short week with the tomorrow. So hope everybody's doing well. Good to see everyone. It looks like we been busy between sessions, so looking forward to a good day together. Kirsty, preference on presenting first or second?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and go first, and we'll start with Articles 4 and 5.
All right, sounds great. And just Susan will be joining us a little bit late, and Sunita and Justice are not joining us today.
Thank you, Tammy and BJR, they will join us as well.
I'll hand it out afterwards.
It's not for you.
Nice. Somebody else can come though now. Yeah.
Right, I called the DAO, oh no, it's not here today.
Thank you.
Again. Get going on the balance shot. Yeah, because that shack will be rebuilt and then, it's a major thing.
Martin, shh. We're not calling this anymore. We're recording.
All right, good morning, everybody here. I just lost power to the computer, I think. All right. Article 4. So obviously the big change that's very noticeable up top is adding in after dismissal just cause. Certainly appreciate in your proposal how you guys kind of lay out the 7 steps of just cause in accordance with kind of just cause protections being enshrined in Oregon state law for public employees. But we'll go over kind of like why we wanted to kind of further kind of define just cause throughout Article 4. So the big change after, obviously the title is adding just cause right there in the kind of first paragraph. In most other contracts that you see for classified employees or even certifieds in our region, just cause is usually a very top line statement at the top of either their articles that are similar like ours, for unsatisfactory performance and discipline, or in their grievance procedure. So I just want us to be more in accordance with the rest of the bargaining unit workers out there. The next 2 paragraphs are the same as what you guys proposed. I mean, most of it is the same. The changes start coming in the kind of like subsections. So in A, there is kind of a disparity, it seems like, between when a supervisor or a principal or an administrator pulls aside a worker to give them a warning in a kind of like, informal conference, right? That is not a step of discipline yet. And when a memo of conversation is issued or produced, I noticed that sometimes a supervisor at their discretion can either produce a memo of conversation or not. So I think it would be good to actually standardize a process for when workers are pulled aside, when they're not given their opportunities to exercise their blind guardian rights, because it's not a disciplinary meeting per se, that we should have standard procedures for written documentation of those conversations. So I think it's important to try to layer that in, just so we don't have these weird disparities of some supervisors do it, some supervisors don't. And then for B, 48 hours notice, that's already kind of a standard thing that the school district practices that we are obviously very happy with, and you guys give members, bargaining workers, and representatives enough time. So we just wanted to kind of make that more clear that it should be at least 2 days notice. For C, it's pretty much all the same. Then in D, we appreciate that you kind of set up Just Cause in 7 steps of it, but we wanted to really kind of line up what BEA has in their contract with BSD in their Just Cause language. They have their own separate article for it. We found that we didn't need to create our own separate article, but we did want to use a lot of the same language as it applies to all workers in the school district, not just certifieds. So we kind of were using the same language there. And then the last line there, we changed from provide to provide, because it is law. You have to pretty much abide by the 7 steps of Just Cause. So it being a provisional thing is kind of besides the point. But we just wanted to make very clear that the members have these rights now. And then for the actual 7 steps, the only thing that was really added was for 1 and 7. We want to just we know that the school district does a good job of trying to coach and try to help correct performance issues with classified staff members. But we want there to be at least some kind of SOP for how training and coaching is being given to workers outside of the outside of when we get to the disciplinary meeting and it's in writing. It would just be nice to see how we can prove that more, that there is actual adequate coaching and training being given. And then for 7, it'd be really nice, I think, for us as representatives to at least have the member know a little bit about what they're being investigated for, as well as the reps. So adding that in there to 7 is just, I think, a nice courtesy for the members and for the association, just so we have a little bit of an idea of what we're heading into, as opposed to kind of being blindsided by investigatory interviews where no one really knows what's going on. And then since we have the Just Cause protections now, we find that everything after E, and this also is, I think, reflective in your proposal, which a lot of this stuff was cut out for non-probationary employees or probationary employees who have been transferred, that I don't think we need a board process for appeal anymore. If there is a dismissal or demotion, I think that the due process protections and Just Cause steps are adequate enough for non-probationary employees and probationary employees too. And then, yeah, we kept the very last paragraph. But that's it. Those are the big changes, and that is what we got for Article 4.
Thank you, Vinu. Appreciate you going over that. This is one with Article 4 that is really important to us. I feel like as soon as we gain just cause as OSEA as a state, this is something that we brought to the district to labor management, something we've talked about often, and we recognize that we work together in a lot of practices with upper leadership and working with HR and making sure that we are following just cause. We do have seen a great growth in it, but we feel it's very important to have it written into our contract and make it clear for members to be able to find, and as well to make it clear and concise and more consistent across the board so that all administration is also following these rules. All supervisors in departments as well as in our buildings are also following the same pattern. We talked a lot at this bargaining table about how people read the contract differently or understand it differently or follow the guidelines. And in the reality of, we understand that these are laws, but we don't expect that every single supervisor can remember every single bully law, every single contract thing. That's a lot to remember. So we really feel it's important to have just cause specifically called out here, and it more defined, like having the words just cause in there, and as well as important to help make sure that we are having uniform and across the district, and so that every building is following just cause standards, whether HR is involved in that conversation or not. You guys give a lot of trust to the admin, and so we want to make sure that they are following the guidelines, and they don't always need to be calling HR to ensure that they are following the contract and using just cause.
Thank you for the clear explanation. We appreciate that. I have one question that starts off. The current contract, section G, you notice that wasn't carried over into your proposal. I'm just asking if that was intentional to not move that one forward, or if that was maybe an oversight.
So G will move to F.
That is, yeah, that formatting error, I think, was cut off in whatever article that I was working on. We can add that in. I think that's. Oh, no, we moved it up, yeah. We moved it up to
But
E.
the beginning of it was cut off, so that it's just format.
Yeah, it's a formatting issue. It's actually was moved up to E in the new proposal. But we kept the language, we can adjust that.
And we can reformat to make sure it matches, but yeah, we just were able to move them around a little bit.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. We found it there.
All right, we'll get back to the news for number 5.
I'm gonna hand these out as well. These are some differentials based on some contract comparisons that we did. So analyzed other contracts for certifieds and classifieds. The level and step process for the grievance procedure, as well as the total amount of days should they be exhausted for the grievance procedure. So, just to give you some context, before we dive into this article.
Can you fix those so we can always see?
Oh, yeah.
Comparison?
Sorry about that. There we go. There's two. You know what? I'll give you all a few as well. Okay. Oh, I should probably plan a copy. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. So yeah, just to give some background context to set up, the rest of the article here. you know, if you look at the other examples here, you know, there are some levels and steps, there are some days that are kind of comparable to us, but by far, you know, our contract has the most levels and steps and the most days for the grievance procedure of any other contract in our region. And we feel that it really discourages members from even trying to initiate any type of grievance. In fact, most members don't. They do just try to handle any potential grievance at the lowest levels possible, which we still want to be a practice. We don't want things to escalate unless it's a very serious issue. But I think that it also creates a situation where members might not even want to try to initiate a grievance procedure because of how complicated, long, and exhausting it looks. So, with that said, with the changes in Article 5, the biggest ones right now come at the very beginning in definitions, right? You know, a grievance is a contention by the association, right? I think that's kind of an understandable thing. The association, as represented by its members, or even its representatives as well. But the biggest change is we're striking allege, right, that there has been a violation or inequity. And then we struck the rest of the language, personal loss or injury, that is what is written under PECPA. So it's like, those are PECPA terms. However, most of the other contracts in our region don't use those terms because I think that it's a lot harder for a member to prove personal loss or injury as defined under PECPA than to prove that there's a violation of the contract or that there was some kind of inequity in either pay in one way or inequity in other types of regards. We kind of thought of a few examples to discuss. If I don't know, Kirsty, if you want to mention some stuff, or Rob, if you want to, yeah, want to go for it, Kirsty?
And some ideas we had around the reality of inequities is the reality of knowing everyone can do their best to follow our new guidelines around access to IEP documentation for classified staff. We can have our best intentions at the beginning of the school year, but the reality is people get hired throughout the year. There's people that get overlooked. Someone maybe not be there at the in-service day when we're doing like review, and we've invited, you know, maybe we invited cafeteria staff who support our lunches to come in and they weren't available that day, or maybe we had a staff meeting and we invited the front office lady who greets our student and walks through the class every day, needs to know his needs, the reality of maybe the recess duty aid that our kid, you know, one of our students has a really hard time every time at recess. Well, the main parent that knows the plan, that's when their lunch is. So now it's the parents out of recess duty who now have the hardship every day. They're not necessarily assigned to our specific kid, but they are the safe adult, keeping everyone safe at recess. So an inequity, in my opinion, to their workload is not knowing, you know, Curtis's plan that every day at 11:05, somehow there's something that's making him mad, triggering him, he's gonna start throwing balls at everyone. Or deciding that the red slide is his and nobody else can look at the red slide, or talk on the red slide, or even think about the red slide, or he's gonna start running around hitting everyone because don't look at my red slide. Now that is gonna be a hardship because now that recess person who was never trained might then be, you know, engaging in physical intervention that they aren't trained for, or be getting struck, or having to separate kids, or take their eye off somebody else who needs to be watched. So the reality of, like, that's just a specific example, but the reality of not having access to IEPs, I don't think is always gonna come at a personal injury to ourselves. More often than not having access to an IEP is going to cause chaos for the student, for the building, for other staff members, for other students. And so I think that's just an example of like how we could see that inequity happening day in and day out could cause undue stress on that staff, on the students at that recess. And so the reality of the reality of how a lot of our work is deeper than just personal injury, or a hardship at work, it can be a lot more things than that, and so that's one example I have.
The red slide is pretty cool though.
I mean, it is, Curtis, the red slide is cool, but it's gotta have safe hands, Curtis.
So, thank you, Kirsty. Moving on from inequity and the struck language, we also kind of wanted to change from the terms of this agreement in the application or interpretation of any provisions of this agreement because, the reality is, the actual application of this agreement, like, I'm confident that human resources knows what they're doing because this is, you study this, this is your job, you understand the collective bargaining agreement and you understand, PECBA and a lot of the other laws that are out there, but I don't know if that could be said for every single supervisor, administrator, or principal in the district, right? So how the CBA is applied and how it's interpreted by, how a violation is interpreted by members is also an important question to kind of raise, and I think it's also important to have in the contract as well. So then moving on, the next big changes in 2 as well. We just wanted to keep the language consistent. So that's what we're kind of doing here, just keeping the language consistent throughout. We also kind of changed, we struck injured to affected, because I think, once again, it's hard to prove your injury, but the affect of a violation of the contract can be proven a little bit better. So, pretty much everything is the same on down 3 and 4. Yeah, the informal conference, step 1 is the same as it has been. Step 2, this is where things start to change a little bit, just so that we can reduce the amount of steps and days, just so we can line up our contract with other CBAs out there in our region. We understand that most grievances are going to be handled at the lowest levels and will most likely be resolved with our team of human resources. From my experience, Curtis, you have been an incredible steward at HR, and with our members, helping them navigate, complex issues, grievances, concerns and complaints, and you're there every step of the way, which, is admirable, and we know that you will kind of probably most likely be a part of this process from the very beginning, from the informal conference period on up. So we wanted to, instead of having all of these different levels and steps within HR until we can get to the next step, we just wanted to, after the informal conference period, which can take a little while sometimes depending on the member's comfort level, going to direct the Chief Human Resources Officer to see how things can get resolved at that level and step. We kept the same amount of days, but we just feel like trying to get things up to a higher level would be just, I think, very beneficial for the members here. And then the next part, the appeal process. We wanted to strike, because we advanced it basically, we kind of removed that, step 2, we removed the executive administrator to Chief Human Resources Officer. We basically struck level 2 with the Chief Human Resources Officer as that part, so we swapped them. And so we, for the appeal process, members, if this proposal is approved, can now appeal to the superintendent and school board, right? So we basically just removed an entire step or level and step. Pretty much the language there stays the same, but we just feel more confident and comfortable that instead of meeting with the superintendent and then the superintendent kind of giving a determination or a summary judgment or a way to kind of resolve the grievance for the member. We like the idea of the superintendent can then recommend the decision to the board, and the board can then make their determination on how to resolve the grievance or how to adjust it. We just feel like that's a little bit more fair and balanced for our members. When we get into arbitration, inequity, just keeping language consistent. Most of it is the same until we get to step 2 of arbitration. We feel like this part at the end right here, if both parties cannot agree, I feel like this also kind of further delays the process, because in reality, if we're striking names from lists, more often than not, names are going to match up if we're selecting arbitrators together. But if we do both land on an arbitrator, and one party says, you know what, I still don't like that arbitrator, then having to, go through that process all again, it really delays and stalls things out. So we wanted to strike that part out. And then everything else is the same, even to the general procedures part. So yeah, there you go. Does anyone else want to add something?
I mean, we're assuming that when the CBA references the voluntary arbitration rules of verb, I'm not familiar with them, but I just assumed there would be alternately striking names until one name remains. And therefore, if we go through that process, I don't see how, I understand that sometimes we both get a list from verb that we both don't like, and we mutually agree to get a new list. I think that's perfectly permissible under just the way we operate, and under the rules of verb. I just don't see that having like the unilateral rejection of a list by one party is fair, particularly when we're going through this process of alternately striking names. So that's all.
More questions? Or not at this moment?
I just have a quick question about the one to use the inequity as the thought with that you're thinking about where maybe the rules are applied by a supervisor in an inequitable fashion between 2 different employees. Is that the thought? Okay.
Yes, or inequitable in the reality that Stoller Middle School is doing it one way and Tumwater Middle School is doing it a different way, even though their jobs are the same. Both in middle school have the same hours and should be equitably doing the same work, have the same tasks, but are continuously different. Because one administrator is following the contract and one administrator is not following the contract. Notice how I didn't say which administrator was not following the contract. Coming your way, we have Article 11, sick leave, and Article 14, safety.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa. So in Article 11, you'll see that we have struck out the OAR again and put in our definition. Our team really believes that as this can change and leave outside of family members, that we believe in keeping our language defining families aligns with the BSD values that we've continued to talk about and is more of an inclusive definition of family. We are already seeing an increase of the changes happening in the federal government, trying to find their way into our our county. Just yesterday, our Washington County commissioners were pushed to the task to vote to already give up DEI programs in Washington County in exchange for funding. So we're seeing this change really happening, and I think as a group, we keep saying that we are, we all feel very safe here in Oregon, and we keep saying that we, BSD, we have these values and these qualities that we stand on, and we believe that, but we think that really keeping this article around family and really defining what family is continues to show our community that we really are standing up for our community, not only our students and our families, but our classified employees and workers in our district, as well as considering that many of us are former BSD students and or our families, our parents of our students, and really trying to keep this equitable and fair, and make sure that we still can align our values as we grow together, no matter what is happening at federal level, that here in BSD, that we still stand strong together on what family is. That is something that has shown important to our board here at the table, our executive board, as well as what we're hearing feedback from our membership and our members in the community, as well as parents and community members who are able to listen in to live sessions. All right, and then we kept most of the same. Up until G, in G, we added additional sick leave compensation will be paid retroactively with documentation to the first date filed with PLO. That was kind of in response to our conversation where we had talked about the reality of having sick leave compensation, and then just kind of went back and forth around what language could look like, waiting if someone is denied PLO, and then we said, suggested the idea of bringing an idea of language, so this is the idea of language that we brought forward for our conversations. And then we have the rest of our language is the same, matching our proposal from before. Other than, I think, cleaning up logistics, making sure that we have the right A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And do we have team have any thoughts they want to add?
All right, Article 14. So a lot of it, we adopted the formatting changes that you guys put forth. The changes that you'll see start in B, B3, where it said the nurse will train one or more unlicensed staff member. We've changed that to the nurse will train a minimum of 3 unlicensed staff members to perform assigned health-related tasks. That's just because there's such a diversity of like what is considered assigned tasks and so forth. So just making sure that we've got an adequate number of people who can assist with those duties. The next change you'll see is in B5. And along the same lines, we've struck out the primarily assigned to and changed that language to who are supporting students with health and medical, behavioral, educational, and disabilities related to needs. Again, same thing that the definition of what, like who's primarily assigned to what, and then job duties and everything as
next change you see, is we added in 6 to bring back, the after-hour safety plan, to be developed, implemented in each building. Just making sure that there's some type of, informational basis for anybody that's in like a building monitor role or, somebody who's supporting that building after hours that doesn't necessarily, belong to that building during your normal work shift. C, we re-added safety committees. The board policy, looking at it, it said unless, distinguished in the CDA, and so we brought this back and are distinguishing it in our CDA. So the safety committees, basically just bringing that whole, article that we previously had back. And then D and E are the same, just cleaning up because, in yours it was C and D, and then because we brought back the safety committees, it moved to D and E.
Thank you, Tom. Something I want to add definitely for the B6, I think something for us, the after hours plan, we kind of talked about how we would, how's that, our idea is that we make a digital document that can be sent, but also have one printed out in a little binder book right by the key box when we check in for nighttime. I think the reality, a big one is knowing how to have access to an EpiPen and AED. A lot of those campus, especially like campus monitors in the evenings, are often there during sports practices or family events. And the reality of, I mean, if there's going to be an emergency, often it's going to be a medical emergency. We can't always wait. You know, having access to the AED is important. That's why we have them, or EpiPens and whatnot. So I think our idea is just we really need that, and then we're open to the idea of how that is housed, whether people get paper copies when they come, and then also having one digital, just so that anybody filling in does have access to being safe.
I have 2 questions, if that's all right. The first is in B5, where you guys made that change away from primarily assigned to. Can you help me understand, like, who you feel like your new definition brings? Because these are people who are going to get 4 hours of paid time per year.
Right. So I
So
think
who else is
who
in
I
this
think
area?
of is I think of in our secondary schools, where we have campus supervisors. Oftentimes, if you're in a program, or not even a program, you're supporting a student on an IEP or 504, whether they're in a self-contained classroom or they're in a general ed setting. Oftentimes, the plan is if they're creating a crisis cycle or they're in a need, they're calling campus supervisors who aren't someone, and it might be the same, you know, every day we're calling them in. I know lots of the secondary teachers that are like, I need to keep teaching the rest of the class, so I'm gonna call in Dom, the campus supervisor, to come support my student while he just has his meltdown or has his needs or needs to go on campus walk right now, because he can't be in the classroom, but I can't take him. So I think that those realities, as well as other office staff supporting.
So what we were kind of talking about was that the way it's written is reading very much like it's geared towards para 2s in a specialized classroom.
Yeah, I think it was.
And the reality of who's on an IEP, who's on a 504, all of these things listed out are not just students in a specialized classroom. So paras who are on lunch and recess duty, for example, they need to know what triggers certain kids out on the playground or in the cafeteria. Resource paras, there's a whole, I mean, anybody in the building essentially that has contact with these students on a supervisory basis would benefit from having time. And it doesn't necessarily need to be 4 hours, because as you all wrote your language in there, it's up to 4 hours. So, but really broadening the scope of who is able to access that information to be able to better support all of our students.
Yeah, that's helpful. I'm wanting to understand, because, and as you guys describe it, I'm almost feeling like this would mean every employee in the school.
Well, it means a majority of classified employees for sure. I would also say like bus drivers, we have a bus driver alone on a bus with 7 or 8 bus aid, but they need to know what's a safety protocol plan, what's a behavior crisis plan, what's a BSP. And a lot of those kids aren't in specialized programs. They're just in general education. Or we have a lot of our kids in eligibility, or we know that they qualify for SPED services and their parents refused, but we are still following their plan. But those bus drivers who are alone, who haven't been trained, who only have time to ask questions at door open and door closed for 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes. And so yes, in some buildings it could be, but I think it's the reality of, since the law has changed, we've had like para ones who are being called in to support students in crises who aren't in specialized programs, and they are being told, well, that law isn't written for you, but it is. And if they're asking, we're just trying to broaden the language so that it's not just a primarily assigned person. Another inequity we know a lot of times for our AAAs, our one-on-one staff, the person on paper that is assigned as the AAA often is not the AAA or the one-on-one staff that works with that student. So if we only have the primarily assigned staff, the wrong staff is trained, and in reality, probably both staff need to be trained.
Yeah, I'm not so much arguing any specific position, I'm just trying to understand your proposal, because here we're promising, it is up to 4, so it's not necessarily 4 hours, but I think we need to know what it is we're promising to give, and when we get into the paid time territory, that becomes even more important for us to understand what exactly we're promising or agreeing to, so, yeah, not arguing any, one group or another,
I
just
think
trying
we're
to
just giving
understand.
big examples because we had a lot of those examples because we also realized that we know what we're asking for. So I think we just spent a lot of time really drawing out different examples of how this could really benefit. And the inequities and what we're hearing often, a lot of these examples are also from our survey, from our members, from where they're like, please don't leave us out in this group, please don't leave us out, because this is an inequity that we experience or we don't have access. But you say I'm supposed to have access to support this kid 6 hours a week at least, but I'm not given any access to the support documents. What are we doing for this kid and for our staff?
Thank you.
I was gonna add to that too, so, another good example would be, I guess in any school, primary or secondary, if I'm a para 1 or para 2, and I'm in a, like, PE class, and maybe the teacher's a sub, and doesn't know the students, but I know the students because I've read their plan, so that's, something that's important, because the sub may completely set off people or not know something, and so having that knowledge is really important. And recess duties, lunch, there's so many times that, probably at least 30% of my day is throughout the building, and I'm interacting with multiple children, and not knowing information about them can make my job more difficult and make their learning experience more difficult.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Don, before you go, I think that there is a difference, right? Because number four guarantees access to employees who support. Number 5 is just talking about who's gonna have that allocated, paid time, right? So we've broken that out in the proposal. Number 4 already uses the language that you're proposing of, if they support the student's specialized needs, having access to those things.
And I hear what you're saying. I think, it's really complicated for a lot of classified staff, to find that time, because a lot of times we only have 10-15 minutes before and or after school, and that's it.
Sure.
And sometimes we don't even have that. And so not having the time set aside to do that, or if you're only able to just read, for 2 minutes, and just get like, so I think that's the big issue there, is being able to have that time to do that, to better
Sure.
provide for our students.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. That's a challenge for us too, is where that time comes.
I hear what Tiffany's saying, and I think that's a good point for 182s, but actually it's kind of counteracted to what I was gonna say, is I think that this kind of really is set to cover our 182s in most spaces where we do have limited time, but like our office staff, they do have time, they could read these documents, they should have access, in their 8-hour days, and their more days before the students are back on their non-student contact days. I think there's training windows for a lot of the other staff that we're meeting, that is built in. Bus drivers have training time, they have part of their sped class, they know when they're bidding a sped route. I think there are a lot of other spaces, kind of the outliers that maybe we're meeting. I think there are some margins for 182s, but I think that this is already written for that. But I think that a lot of our other staff that we'd be looking to inform our custodial maintenance crews and things that might be supporting in specialized programming, they have to come in a lot, fix things right in the middle of a classroom, or do a biohazard cleanup. I think there are times that they don't have as much student contact time, where we could easily get them up to 4 hours to make sure that they are safe and following plans.
I mean, I think it's a matter of perspective, right? If you're talking about 4 hours a year as liability, and I'm thinking that this is a pretty easy investment for the safety of students and your staff. I mean, I am blown away by how many injuries that my members are facing around the state and around the country. So, I mean, this to me seems like a really low cost investment. 4 hours a year isn't a lot, and it's up to 4 hours. So.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything else on that one? I do have one other question.
I was gonna say something on number 6 that you had mentioned. Okay. So B6, another good example is, sometimes my key card doesn't work in all buildings I'm at. And so getting access to that EpiPen or first aid stuff, whatever it is I need, I may not have that access. And so prior to going, I would then know that and be able to contact the custodian to have them unlock it or do something so that I would have that access if needed. So not knowing where all those things are, it makes an emergency really complicated.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to add, just waiting to answer your next question.
Oh, okay, great. I actually have 2 more questions. They're both on safety committees, and I guess my first question is a little, just kind of global. Are we talking about the statutorily required safety committees here, or is this another safety?
That's not the statutory ones
Okay.
that are already happening inequitably.
Okay, and then maybe this is probably a little bit more of a ticky-tack question, I guess. Down in C5, when we're saying a safety committee will have one classified employee representative from a specialized classroom. And I may have asked this last time, but I mean, is it the association's position that we could, if we had no volunteer, nobody in that position at a given school wanted to be on the safety committee? And I've heard you talk about, hey, our members are telling us they want, there is at least some possibility we could have a building where none of those folks wanted to be. Would the district under this language be required to and have the authority to assign somebody to perform that duty? Or would we just resort to not having them on the safety committee? I ask, it's gonna come up where it's
No,
like,
and it's gonna, because there are gonna be buildings where no one wants to do it, or there's not a reality of time to do it.
yeah,
You think about the specialized program, bus aiding, anything like that, personal things. I think we'd be open to a counter proposal on a different way to word that, of it being, preferred, or something of that nature, so it's kind of a push that we're really trying, and it's not just, up to that, and you just puts out one email and in service week, and no one answers that one email, and they're like, well, we tried that, I'm not trying again.
yeah,
But also not necessarily demanding or causing, how you pick which one, or especially, say, don't want 2 specialized programs, which one is more safety need? So I think we'd be open to some language around maybe switching something
Okay.
like preferred, or.
yeah, that's helpful. I think if we do end up with language here, and I think that we proposed none, obviously, but if we do end up with language here, 4 and 5 need to work together, right? Because you have employee representatives being volunteers or elected by their peers, but then number 5 having like a carve out for,
Right.
yeah, that may be the case, but at least one of them needs to be, so I think that those 2 just need to work together a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that we've kind of kept them separate, just in, I think, hearing some of what you're saying, and us trying to find the best language, to blend them, so we would be open to see what you guys maybe have to work those together.
Okay, those were all my questions. Do you have any? Great. Anybody else?
there a set time that we need to go into caucus for you to be able to go over to custodial meetings? Or you guys fix that?
Thank you. What time are you heading over? I need to be there, I think I need to leave right at 12 or 12:10.
I was unclear that there was time for us. When we last looked at it, it sounded like there was no time left in the schedule for us, but we were gonna consider having somebody pop down.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
So you're gonna leave about 12 till 10, you said?
Yeah, yeah. And we are, huge thanks to Chris for organizing all of the logistics to being here at Tumwater, including lunch today.
Thank you.
So appreciate all that. Lunch will be here at 12.
We might save you some, thank you.
Alright, so we wanna plan to just caucus as close to 12 as we can, obviously not stop mid-sentence if we're
Yeah.
supposed to plan for a 12 o'clock caucus.
We
And
should
do a
be-
little longer so we can do lunch and get, yeah, alright, sounds good, thank you.
We should be able to get through these presentations.
Okay. Article 12, personal time off. The first bit, it's a lot of rearranging, so lots of cross-outs and then moving, so just so it flows a little better, and then we added some numbering to make sure it's a little easier to reference. To start off the primary change, we did hear you mention about kind of aligning more with the certified group who has 4 PTOs, so we looked at calendars and what that might look like. So we do agree, looking at everyone's calendars, that our classified employees on the 212 and the 222 calendars don't get those days kind of throughout the year. I think there's 9 days in next year's calendar that are kind of sprinkled throughout the year where you could schedule other things and have those days off that those people do not have. So 182s have those days, 212s, 222s do not have those days. They also don't have vacation. So we agree that those 2 groups should get 4 PTO days to help kind of give them a little more opportunity to work things in when they need them throughout the year. But we did keep the 3 days for the payouts for PTOs the same as you have had. And I think that's kind of the only substantial change besides moving things around. Everything else should still be noted in there. As far as use of PTO, just got moved around, and everything else I believe is the same.
All right, thank you. We'll let you know in a little bit if you have any other questions.
Okay. You can hand out 13 and 17. You're 17? No, I'm 15.
I give you both the two.
Okay.
Sherry, do you want to?
All right, so starting with Article 15, appreciate your counter from the second. We were able to take a lot of what you proposed and incorporated that into our proposal here. So we feel this is a meet in the middle on many topics. You'll see starting off with A, no change there. In B, we accepted your proposal to increase the length of time for notification of layoff to 15 days. So far as the unique skill or ability specifically that the district determines are a priority for the position. We know that sometimes there are skill sets that may not exist in a job description that are very important and valuable in a particular role. Speaking in other languages is a common example of that, and we want to be able to maintain those unique skills throughout the district as they benefit our students and communities. So we're maintaining the language the district determines our priority regarding the unique skills. The next section C1, we are meeting more in the middle on this one regarding the bumping right notification time. We've moved ours to 48 hours, so we've increased that number there to be in closer alignment to your proposal. C2, maintaining the language again repeated above about the unique skill or ability when it comes to bumping. And then moving on to 7, this is an area that we are still a little farther apart. You had a request of salary placements being kind of guaranteed or locked in the event that somebody is bumped or moved to a different position. And we are maintaining that it's based on the qualifications of the individual in relation to the requirements for the position. And that really allows us to maintain pay equity, which is really important to make sure that employees who are similarly qualified in the same role receive similar compensation. So we think it's very important that we maintain pay equity, and the language in our 7 allows us to do so. In D, reduction in hours, you propose language that would result in, when there's a reduction in hours, that the reduction would be made based on seniority. We did not accept that particular language really out of concern for the global impacts in those situations. When we have for example, we're experiencing a reduction in hours of a group of para 2s, that could, therefore, if we followed the proposed language, any reduction in hours would require that we look at all people in that job title, and many of our job titles are widely spread throughout the district, so the results would likely be significant movements, involuntary movements throughout the district, which is very disruptive to relationships and being part of the community. And so we want to make sure that we avoid any unnecessary disruption of a large-scale nature like that. And I believe we are the same on E and through the conclusion, hearing of, right, am I missing something?
No, I mean, I think we broke it out into numeric sections instead of just full paragraphs. That's just formatting difference.
Right, yep, thank you. All right. Questions on 15?
Not at this time, but I do have a one back on 12. In B2, just want to confirm the acronym, in bold, the PFMLI.
Yeah, I think they're almost interchangeable. I mean, if there's a preference, it goes from.
Yeah, if there's a preference for PLO, I think we're over.
I've just never seen the I listed, so I was confused what that was for. I do too, and I just want to make sure that we're matching the same throughout the contract.
Okay.
Yeah, we should go through and just make sure we're not
Just using the same acronym, because otherwise it looks like a different program, and then it's
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah, we heard that. The I is insurance, but
That's what I thought too, but then even when I was like, even on the website, it doesn't list that, and none of our other proposals have that either. I was double checking them, and so I just was checking.
so many acronyms, it's good to keep them consistent. Thank you.
Well, it's Stephanie's question about 12 as well, before you put them away.
All right, and I believe
Hold on.
17 may be blissfully free of acronyms, so that's nice.
Don't
All right.
jinx it, Curtis.
Yeah, and the moment I say it, there's gonna be 10. All right, Article 17, there's significant movement on this one to move in the direction of your proposal with a couple caveats, but the most significant movement is the acceptance. We're in agreement with the awarding of vacation upon hire, essentially. So acknowledging that new hires, in particular to the district, may currently experience a struggle with not having vacation. We hear your concern there and are accepting that proposal. Continuing down through your proposal, you've also proposed a allocation formula based on years of service. I don't believe it was intentional, but it would impact negatively employees between years 5 and 8 would receive a reduction from our current allocation formula, and so we're maintaining the current allocation formula, so those that are between 5 and 10 years will continue to receive 15 days instead of an incremental increase over the course of those years. Next significant difference here is in A7.
Curtis was talking about the accrual or when vacation is credited, and that would be on July 1. You'll see that in A3, we did add a sentence there because in the event that we don't have a ratified contract by this July 1, we need to sort of build in a caveat, and that's why you see, so if we don't have a settled or ratified agreement by July 1, status quo would have us awarding credit or awarding vacation in the current method of the contract, which is month by month. So that would continue, and then when ratification occurred, we have within 60 days of that, people would then get that full balance. So that sentence is just to try and cover a transition, kind of straddling status quo and then into that change. So just wanted to call that out.
Thank you. Yeah, we learned with anything with insurance or benefits or vacation that there's just a needed, necessary window of time to kind of correct the course after we've started sailing down a particular path, so I appreciate that. Where was I? A7. We're maintaining during a probationary period that the new employees will not be eligible to use vacation. They'll continue to accrue vacation, but not use. We feel that is consistent really with industry standards to allow individuals the opportunity to show full mastery during their probationary period. So we are holding to the 6-month window, which is better than where it was, a significant improvement from the current situation, really not having any for that first year. So we feel that's a move towards a compromise in the middle there. B, we did some formatting. We feel that the current contract just used a little bit of clarity, so we pulled out 2 sections, vacation use, and then just to kind of make this a little clearer as to what the topics are that we're talking about here. We had considerable conversation around the carryover. You'll see in our proposal that the language allows for a maximum of 1/2 of the employee's annual allotment to be carried over year to year. So you'll see that in B1. And then, again, you proposed language subsequently regarding a buyout in your section B, or payout rather. And we did not accept that language in our proposal. Again, as we've made movement on the allocation formula and also the awarding timelines, we have concerns though about the language as proposed regarding the payout of vacation. Specifically, the language proposed is upon mutual agreement, vacations can be rescheduled, and so there could be situations in which it's just never agreed upon, and kind of forcing the hand to pay out large amounts of vacation. And so the encumbrance of the financial liability there is something that we want to avoid. So vacation use, following our current procedures with supervisor approval, and allowing for 50% carryover, we feel adequately meets those particular concerns. And then the final section, separation of employment, I believe we're consistent with our language. Just we titled this a separate section to make it clear these are applicable during or upon separation of employment. We didn't bring forward the language of beneficiary. That is our current practice. That's the law. We do have to pay it out, but we didn't bring forward that language regarding beneficiary.
We don't really.
And correct, we don't pay the beneficiary directly, it's still paid to the employee, or the name of the employee, and then it's really dependent upon their estate to determine how those funds may be subsequently allocated. Questions on